What's happening, everybody? Welcome back. This is Forgo, and today we got the Battle of Darkness. We have Nightmare Geese versus Dellons. We have a collab versus a BS character. We are going to see who is deadlier amongst the two. And there are some stark differences between these characters. I think the first stark difference that we need to point out is that Geese has a lot of higher native attack stats than Dellons. As long as I can find him here real quick. All right, there we go. So Geese here actually has 10,195 attack. And Dellons actually has 9,684 attack. So there's a pretty big difference in the amount of native attack stats that these characters have. So that's one big difference between them. A few other little differences is that Geese here can actually reset 2 skills upon using his blast skills. So whenever he does his second skill, he can actually has a 50% chance to reset his first and third skill. Which means if you start off with the first and the third skill and then go into the second, and then if he resets the first and the third again, that is a total of 5 skills all at once. Which means, I mean, if you're doing 5 skills versus Dellon being able to do 4 skills, because Dellon actually can reset his first skill from doing his second skill. So you got 5 skills versus 4 skills. If they reset, right, Dellons would has a 100% chance to reset. So that's something to keep in mind. And then Geese here has a 50% chance. I'm sorry, he has a increased active skill damage by 50% when attacking enemies in darkness or shock, right? He has double dot. That's another big difference. Whereas Dellon actually only has 1 dot effect, which is darkness, and he actually gets an increased active skill damage by 30%. 30% versus 50%. And this is on a 20-second cooldown, and Geese's is actually on there is no cooldown. That's a big difference. That's a big difference. So not only does he have an extra 20% increase of active skill damage, but he has no cooldown on this, whereas Dellons does. So, you know, Geese can reset 2 skills, Dellons can reset 1 skill. Geese has extra active skill damage from his core, more active skill damage than Dellon, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Now, Dellon can actually cancel all 3 of his skills faster than what Geese can. Geese can cancel his first and second skill very quickly, but his third skill actually takes a little bit of time. He's got to jump up, throw down his Repukin, and then he can go into his other skills, but it takes him a little bit of time. Now, as far as the comparison on the builds, well, you know, actually, first thing we're going to do is we're actually just going to go into championship. Let's go into championship, and let me show you a little something. So championship is a good place to gauge how strong characters actually are. We can see how much damage they're actually going to do, and what we're going to do is we're going to slap the same card sets on both these characters. Now, something to keep in mind is that both of these characters have darkness, right? But this set actually increases shock and darkness. So Geese is actually going to benefit from the shock and darkness, increased shock and darkness damage by 75% and active skill damage by 23%, a little bit better than what Dellons will, because Dellons has no shock damage. But you guys, you're going to see just how strong Dellons really is, because just knowing that and knowing that we're going to put this card set on both these characters it really will show you how strong Dellons is, especially when I'm comparing him to Geese. It really is amazing, because Geese is getting double dot benefit from this card set, whereas Dellons is getting a single dot benefit. But I don't think they actually stack on top of each other. Like, I don't think you get shock and darkness, and then you get 75% of shock all at once and 75% of darkness all at once, and then they add together. I don't think it really works that way. I think it's just 1 dot at a time is how it actually works. And I do have a blast skill card on him. And the reason being is the blast skill card works well for Dellons and Geese, because both of them have 2 blast skills in their regular active skills. And since we're going to be going in guild raid and spamming our skills, this is going to be very beneficial. Plus, Dellons, I do believe, has a blast skill. Yeah, he has a blast skill on his default. And actually, Geese is the same way. So Geese actually has 2 blast skills out of his 3 active skills, the same as Dellons. And he also has a blast on his default. So I just went ahead and decided to use that card set for both of these characters. And then, of course, we're going to use Dellons 3PG and this other card that I got right here that adds like 2,000 CP. We'll take that off. We'll put it back on them. And you see it adds like 2,000 CP. For Geese, we're just going to be using 2 3PGs that he has. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the championship, and we're just going to run through the rotation one time. Now, something to keep in mind is, again, with Dellons, you can only do 4 skills. So you 100% chance reset the first skill from doing the second skill. So you do the first, for the third, the first. There we go. And we got 807,000. I'm going to go ahead and write that down. 807,000 damage, right? So now we're going to slap that card set on Geesey Boy. All right. Let's see what he does. All right, now the thing about this is I have a 50% chance of resetting my first and third skill. So with Dellons, we did 4 skills, right? We did 4 skills. So let's try something here. I did 3 skills, guys. 3 skills. Just 3 skills. I didn't even do more than that. And we did 991,000 damage. So Geese, even doing the same amount of skills, even though he's got the benefit of resetting 2 skills instead of just 1 versus Dellons, right? And even though we did 3 skills versus 4 skills against Dellons, we still did almost 200,000 more damage. Right? I mean, it's just, that's pretty freaking insane, guys. That's a pretty big difference between these 2 characters, right? So when you go into Guild Raid, and this is where the real test is. Now, an interesting thing about Guild Raid is I actually pre-recorded a couple runs from Geese and Dellons, and I got to tell you guys, things were getting pretty wacky with Dellon. You can see I have 98 Athena. The reason being is Dellons has no decreased damage received at all in his kit. He has nothing in his active skills, nothing in his core. He has no decreased damage received at all. I mean, he's got a 20% PG rate, which is fine, but Dellons 3PG can be interrupted, whereas Geese's cannot. And that is a massive advantage. That's something I've talked about quite a bit on this channel. These characters that have these 3PGs that can't get interrupted, or 5PGs that can't get interrupted, that's pretty powerful. And Dellons can actually get interrupted. His default or his 3PG can get interrupted. As far as I know, so far, every single character in the game's default can get interrupted, but their super, their main 3PG and 5PG on certain characters cannot. And as far as Dellons, his 3PG can actually get interrupted, where Geese's can't, right? And the other thing is here, Geese here actually does have a decreased damage received by 75% for 4 seconds. This makes him a whole lot tankier and a lot easier to keep alive, especially when Rugal does his explosions. Dellons has a hard time keeping alive. Like when you just do a solo like this and you're just face tanking, Dellons has a hard time keeping alive. In fact, I go about a minute into this fight and he pretty much dies, whereas Geese, I can play at one time, keep him alive throughout the entire fight. Don't need a healing striker. Don't need nothing like that because we have the decreased damage received. Something to also mention about Geese versus Dellons is Geese actually has an increased target damage received by 20% when he does his default. Dellons doesn't. But Dellons does apply darkness on his default, whereas Geese doesn't. The characters are actually very, very different, and you know, this video might shed some light on to some of you as far as what you should really be saving your rubies for. Should you be saving your rubies for BS characters and SS characters, or should you be saving for collab characters? And Dellons is one of the most powerful collab characters in this game, easily. He's still one of the best characters in this game. And you see the imprint stones. Now here's where the advantage really comes into play. Well, actually, there's a lot of advantages already that Geese has. With the native attack stats, increased active skills, having the extra active skill damage from the core, but also the fact that, and the increased damage on his default, but also the imprint stones. So I actually have volume 1 imprint stones on my Geese. So this first stone actually increases boss fighter's blast skill damage by 15%. That's always up. And then we got the increased strike skill damage by 15%. That's a pretty big bump. And actually, there's a stone here that could actually increase active skill damage on top of it getting the double attack damage, which would be about 30% increase of damage in this third stone. But I just got a double attack with the increased damage to darkness for him. And that it is a big advantage because Dellons, He just has double attack from the 7 Knights Stones. They're all maxed out. Both these characters are maxed out capsules, all the good stuff. They're all decked up. But that is a big difference, you know, the fact that Geese has the higher attack stats and all the things that I've talked about earlier. But he also gets the extra 15% against strike damage increase and blast damage increase. I mean, he's got a lot of benefits. So what I've done to try to balance this out a little bit better is I'm going to show you guys a split screen run where I got Geese on the left-hand side and I'll have Dellons on the right-hand side. And Geese will be using his leadership. And his leadership actually increases attack TIE fighters by 45%. And the PG rate by 20%. And increased attack fighters, the thing that we're really looking at, that increased attack by 45%. What I've done, try to level the playing field out for these characters, because it's obvious Geese has a pretty massive advantage, is I did the run with Geese using his leadership, and I did the run with Dellons using his leadership, because his leadership actually increases blue fighters attack by 55%. So Dellons will actually get an extra increase attack by 10% more than what Geese will get in his run. On top of that, I actually have a striker for Dellons, whereas I'm not using a striker for Geese. And the striker's extra CP, that 1930 you're seeing next to Athena's face, is extra CP that's being added to Dellons. So when you look at Geese, you see that he's got 71,655 CP, right? He does have his cards on him. And Dellon, whenever you equip his cards on him, we'll go ahead and do that real quick. You can see that he actually has 68,853 CP. So he actually has less CP than Geese by a pretty large margin. But when you add that 68,000 or almost 69,000 to the almost 2,000 that Athena has, you actually have about 70,783 CP, if my math is correct. So 70,783 CP versus the 71,655 CP that Geese has. So I got their CP fairly close, but I mean, again, you know, like I said, we're just giving Dellons a lot of advantages. You know, the extra increased attack by 10% from his leadership versus Geese, having the striker, but really I just need a striker to keep him alive, because, man, he lacks survivability, guys. He lacks it so much, man. Not having a decreased damage received is pretty important. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the settings and we're going to turn off all this sound, and we're going to go ahead and queue up this little video that I have made for you guys. So we have Geese on the left and we have Dellons on the right. And full disclosure, I pretty much just came in here and I just started face tanking these bosses. Now with Geese, I only had to do this one time because he has a decreased damage received by 75%, which really helps. I didn't have to worry about dying, but unfortunately with Dellons, I had to play him a few times, and that's why I just went ahead and decided to put 98 Athena in there. So Dellons has all the advantages. He's got the extra attack because I'm using his leadership in his run versus using Geese's leadership in Geese's run, and I'm giving Dellons an extra 2,000 CP from Athena. And I didn't even show you guys the Imprint Stones. I'll show you that here in a little bit because that does make a difference. But you can see right now that Geese has 53 million, Dellons has 49 million. So as far as damage, right, when their CP is fairly close, they're pretty neck and neck. They're really not that far off. And by the way, any of you that have Dellons, you're still loving life. This guy helped me so much in this game. So this isn't a knock on him or nothing like that, but it might provide some insight for some of you as far as whether or not you really want to save for your characters. And another advantage that Geese has over Dellons here is the fact that that 3PG does not get interrupted. Also, something I didn't even show is that when Geese does his default, he gets an extra 20% damage dealt from doing his default. So he's just got a lot of extra buff. He's getting the extra 20% active skill damage. You know, he has a 50% increase to shock and darkness, whereas Dellons has the 30% increase of active skill damage from his core. Geese can actually reset 2 skills versus 1 skill that Dellons can. I mean, he's just really an all-around better character. He has a decreased damage received. And you can see now that Geese is pulling ahead as far as damage, and that's because he keeps just stalling that timer. He's stalling the timer, and it's enabling him to do a lot more damage over time. He's just pulling ahead further and further. And again, with Geese, I just came in here one time. Boop, 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 boop. I just started running through my skills. I really wasn't trying any certain rotation. I wasn't trying to get like the best optimal run. I was just coming here and going for the gold. But I mean, he's got 134 million. Dellons has 106 million. It's pretty obvious who's actually stronger. The same card sets, virtually the same CP. I mean, Geese does have a little bit more CP. But I mean, he's a BS character. He just has a higher native attack stats. And I did give Dellons his leadership. He's getting that extra 10% attack. So they're pretty much on a level playing field as far as their attack stats whenever you're taking their leaderships into account. And Geese is still pulling ahead. But I mean, you know, both of these characters are so cool. Like, these two have two of the best 3PGs and defaults in the game, in my opinion. I just love Dellons' skills. I love his defaults. They're mystifying, right? They're dark, as they should be. And Geese is the walking undead, you know. I mean, obviously, I'm a little more partial to Geese because, you know, he's Nightmare Geese, right? I mean, I just love Nightmare Geese. He's one of my favorite characters in the franchise. But Dellons, you know, for a collab character, a newcomer to KOF, just insanely awesome, wonderful character. Love him to death. Now, we're going to go ahead and pause this whenever Dellons finishes his run so you guys can actually see how much damage he actually did. Oh, I love that default. So awesome. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and back this up a little bit so you guys can see that Dellons has done 171 million. We do have 3 seconds left, so I could have probably got up to about 180 million, something like that. And Geese is already up to 197 million. And because Geese has that nice long 3PG, and both these characters have long defaults, or fairly long default. Well, actually, Dellons has a longer default than Geese, but they both have long 3PGs as well. The difference is Geese doesn't get interrupted, so he actually can stall the timer for longer, and it shows right here. He's got an extra 4 seconds, and 4 seconds does make a big difference in the amount of damage you do over time. It makes a big difference. So we're going to go ahead and finish watching this out and see what Geese does. So remember, Dellons got 171 million. Oh, sorry, I went ahead and paused it there. Didn't mean to do that. I love it. Love that skill. So awesome. Nice. So, I mean, we're at 229 million. That's a pretty big difference in the damage between these two characters. Like, what are we looking at? We're looking at about almost, 50 to 60 million, somewhere in that range, right? Depending on your runs. That's a pretty big difference. So let me know what y'all think about this comparison, and if you'd like to see another one of one character versus another character, and if there are, the same level of waking and everything, I will try to queue that up for you. And, maybe this will shed some light for you as far as, should you go for a collab in the future, or should you save for a BS? I can tell you that a lot more people have a lot more luck pulling for collab characters versus BS characters. I mean, I know I do. I mean, these BS banners have been absolute murder, whereas collab banners seem to be a bit more friendly. We seem to be having a little bit more luck. At least that's the feedback that I get from a lot of the players, and definitely the experience that I've had in the past. So maybe that's something to keep in mind in the future if you decide to pull for a collab or a BS or SS character. So again, let me know how y'all feeling about this comparison, and I do stream on Twitch at 9 p.m. GMT plus 7 time. The link will be in the description below, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. Y'all take care and have a good one. See ya.